Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, coming to you from Carson City. We're talking about the Nevada End-of-Life Options Act with Sara and Dr. Johanna Koch. They're here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Located in the heart of Carson City, the Bank Saloon is a historic watering hole with a modern feel. With a variety of classic cocktails featuring Nevada spirits, space for private events, conferences, and an incredible atmosphere, the Bank Saloon offers a great location to work and play. Come visit us. Located at the corner of 5th and Carson, we'll save you a drink.
Big R in Sparks is located on Bering Boulevard next to Smith's and across from Reed High School. It's a 50,000 square foot hardware store and a whole lot more. It's huge, with clothing, power equipment, tools, and of course, hardware. Big R is located on Bering Boulevard in Sparks, next to Smith's and opposite Reed High School. Big R, hardware, and a whole lot more.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
It's the Lucky Lexus Cash and Free Play giveaways at Tamarack. Weekly Cash and Free Play winners plus a $20,000 cash winner guarantee. And drive home a brand new Lexus NX30 or walk away with $42,500 in cash. It's a good time to win at Tamarack Casino.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're coming to you from the conference center at the Bank Saloon in Carson City, and I'm joined by Sara with Compassion and Choices Action Network, and Johanna Koch, who is a hospice physician, and it's a pleasure to have you both here. Thank you for doing this. The bill is SB 239, and it's the Nevada End-of-Life Options Act. Please explain what this is and how this differs from previous versions that we've dealt with.
Sam, first I want to thank you for having us. We are very excited about SB 239, the Nevada End-of-Life Options Act. It provides for a patient who is terminally ill, their death is approaching because of a natural process, to consult with their doctor or nurse practitioner, so their provider, and another provider, to discuss the option of getting a prescription that will allow them to peacefully end their life when they are ready. Okay, so what are the objections that you're hearing so far? Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because one of the objections is something that you actually brought up when we were arranging the interview, and it was, I've told my kids, I don't want to live like that. Well, this isn't that. So it's really important to be clear that the End-of-Life Options Act allows patients in Nevada to access medical aid in dying. This is a time-tested process that states around the country have authorized over the past 25 years. We're now at 10 states, and what we have found about this process is that with the proper protections and safeguards, it provides peace of mind to people who are terminally ill. Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, one of the reasons that I have you guys on, and I've had others on over the years, is it's something I totally believe in. You know, I mean, you know, we're supposed to have freedom of choice in this country, and, you know, if I'm in a situation where I know that I'm going to die, and I want to be able to end my life, I want to be able to do it in a legal and clean way, as it were.
I don't want to have to go buy a gun or be in the garage and turn on the car and then have the fire department and the police department have to deal with the mess. I want it to be done in a way that is suitable for our society, and it makes no sense to me that we don't have that option. Oregon has passed this law several years ago. California has now passed this law. What are the guardrails that are in place now that you feel may make our legislators in the state more comfortable with passing this law?
Well, there are a number of protections for patients and for providers, and that's really important. So I'll talk about patients first. For patients who have a diagnosis that they know what's going to happen and they know it's really going to be very, very difficult, and that they're going to experience great suffering, this allows them to have the peace of mind after they do a process. So there's the threshold of eligibility, which is adult, terminally ill, less than 6 months to live, and able to consent, so able to understand what it is they're asking for. Then, once people who meet all those criteria can request this from their doctor, they have to ask for it. And once they ask for it, their provider has to make sure that they have the capacity to make this decision for themselves, that they're doing it freely, that no one is asking them to or telling them to. The bill also suggests, with a form that's written into it, to the patient that in addition to this written request, so that there's an oral request at the beginning of a waiting period, then there's a written request, and then at the end of that 15-day period, there's another additional request to another provider. So they're talking to two doctors, and the written request is a form that's written into this bill, and it suggests to people, talk to your family, talk to your spiritual advisors, make sure that this is what you really want to do. And that was a response to an objection that many people had raised, not just legislators, but many people around the state have raised, which is they're worried. Are people choosing this because they want to, because they are ready to end the suffering they are experiencing from their terminal illness? Or perhaps, I actually had a legislator say this to me, perhaps someone wants to get their inheritance a bit more quickly.
Right, and that's come up multiple times over the years that we've been dealing with this.
Yeah.
So do you feel that there are enough safeguards in place that is not likely to be an option, that somebody's just out to make financial gain or some other kind of gain from this?
There are just significant protections in the bill that are there to assure everyone that the person making this choice is the person who's suffering from the illness. But it's also important to note that in the 25 years this time-tested, trusted medical aid in dying process has been available around the country in now 10 states, we just have not seen these instances of coercion that we were all so worried about. So at the point where Nevada began discussing this, I believe that was about 10 years ago, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a while. We didn't have nearly the data that we do now. Since then, California, Colorado, New Mexico, Washington have all permitted this practice. New Jersey, we're really seeing data from around the country, from all kinds of people in all kinds of places. And what we're seeing is that patients ask for this when they are experiencing suffering and they are about to die.
Well, the thing, and I made a comment about this earlier, is that there are all kinds of ways for people to do this to themselves.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that we would have a legal, medically approved method of doing this makes a lot more sense to me than somebody having to do something to themselves that may be far more barbaric. And it's their body, it's their choice. Am I wrong?
Sam, we hear that a lot, and particularly in the connection of people deciding here in Nevada, as you know, we have a very high rate of gun ownership compared to the background rate in the country. And you're going to be hearing from the doctor shortly about one of her patients, a tragic situation, because when people want to end their suffering, they don't want to die. This isn't suicide. They want to live, but they can't because their bodies are breaking down. They have lost the possibility of further life. And for those people, having a legal process that is authorized for them to work with their provider and another provider, both of whom are assessing them to make sure that this is coming from their suffering, that it's their own choice, that seems to me to be much more protective of people's freedom and their rights. Moreover, it offers the provider a way to give this to patients and know that they're going to be protected from liability. That was one of the issues that came up in our hearing a few weeks ago that I think is really worth talking about a little bit.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I'm happy to, but I would like if we could.
Well, I'm gonna drag Joy into this conversation here momentarily.
When you're ready.
But please come up and talk about what the discussions have been with the committee so far.
Well, we had some very tough questions from Dr. Robin Titus, Senator Dr. Robin Titus, who had tough but fair questions about.
That's her. All over.
Exactly, about what exactly the bill contained, who was going to be allowed to practice under it, and how these deaths were going to be documented, so that the goal of a death certificate, which is epidemiology, what are people dying from, and in how long, right? That's why we keep a death certificate in this country, is to keep track of it, and also for estate reasons. She really wanted to make sure that we were doing that correctly and aligned with the Nevada statutes. And I think that we have been able to work with all the stakeholders to get to something that meets with those concerns. I'm very excited about that piece of this bill because, of course, death certificates are important. We want to make sure that if patients use this and they use the protections of this law, that they are able to collect on their life insurance. That's something that has been a real question a lot of people have had around the country is, isn't this suicide? Doesn't it cause all kinds of problems with your estate? And the answer is no, it's not suicide. And so how we ask
Really? Okay, that's interesting.
So suicide is a legal term, right? And so we needed to work with experts in the Nevada statute to determine how the death certificate can record this death so that it meets with that test. And so it's not recorded as a suicide, and more to the point, that it meets with the expectation that the CDC hands to all states, which is, are you recording how many people died of pancreatic cancer? How many people died of ovarian cancer? So that we can track those diseases and better understand them.
Okay, Joy, I want to bring you into this. Sorry to have made you wait this long, but it just seems to me that this is a humane thing. On so many levels. One, a personal choice issue. Second of all, I think for those of us that have families, I wouldn't want to put my wife through some horrible 10 years of some awful disease and dying. And obviously it's a 6-month deal. Or my kids or anything like that. I want to be able to take responsibility for myself. Give us some real world examples of this so that people can understand that it's not some crazy scheme where people are plotting to take over somebody's goods and services.
So thank you, Sam, and thank you for having us. This is really a wonderful opportunity. I have been practicing medicine locally in Nevada for 35 years. I've been doing hospice work for 20. I've been working both in California and Nevada doing hospice work, including the last 12 years at Summit View Hospice in Reno. And in our hospice experience in California and Nevada, I have never had a patient who requested medical aid in dying who was being driven by some factors other than their own personal suffering. In fact, we've had to wait many times for a family to get on board with the patient. The patient's usually leading the charge here, and the family takes more time because they're thinking about their loss more than the patient is thinking about their loss because they're suffering. And so the two examples that I think would be the most valuable here are one from California and one from Nevada. As a physician who has prescribed medical aid in dying in California, I have a particular patient that's near and dear to my heart that I took care of during his palliative care experience while he was at a cancer center and then a referral center while he was being treated for his pancreatic cancer. And he had exhausted all conventional treatment. He had then gone into experimental trials and put his body through being a guinea pig. It had cost him a lot in terms of his health. It had probably extended his life a little bit. And he'd reached the end of the road. His health was now so poor that he couldn't walk. He couldn't get to the doctor's office to continue treatment, and they declined to treat him further. And so he had a family that was not on board with medical aid in dying. It took them 2 months before they finally were willing to support him, and he wasn't willing to go forward without them. And so we completed our 2 visits. We had one of his oncologists do a visit with him, and I had to go to his home for his 2 visits because he couldn't get out. I mean, it would have been an ambulance ride to get him to my office. And his family supported him in the process. He reached the day of his death, and his family had arranged for people from all over the country that love this dear man to send little short videos wishing him well on his next journey and expressing their love and gratitude for the things he'd done for them in their lives. He was a strong member of our community. He was a beloved member of our community. And on the day of death, when I arrived at the house to help him mix the medications and prepare for the process, they were watching a video with 12 family members in the room, and they were celebrating. They had a bottle of wine open, they had snacks and appetizers around, and they were telling jokes. Now, this is a man who could barely speak, so his jokes were short and sweet, but they were there nevertheless. And you know, when it was finally the moment, he took the first sip of this medicine, which does not taste good, by the way. It's not a walk in the park. And he looked around and he said, "Holy expletive, I had no idea it would taste this bad." And then he downed the rest of it, and the whole family was chuckling over his joke. And he fell asleep within about 3 minutes, and within a few hours after that, he passed without any more distress. And the family was so profoundly grateful, so profoundly grateful. So that, in my experience, is a typical death with medical aid in dying.
All right, let's take a break. We'll absorb what you've just said because that's a great story, and I really appreciate it. And we'll talk more about this topic when we come back.
Come join the month-long celebration during the Carson Valley Inn 13th anniversary giveaways with guaranteed $1,000 winners every drawing night and a $13,000 grand prize winner guaranteed. Come celebrate with us during the 13th anniversary giveaways at the Carson Valley Inn.
The Do It Right guys at Nevada Heating have one mission. Your furnace breaks down today? We fix it today. Why freeze for days while your furnace is down when Nevada Heating can get the job done today and you can get warm again? For nearly 50 years, locally owned Nevada Heating has been getting the job done right. Call today at 323-5585 and we'll fix it today. That's 323-5585 or online at nevadaheating.com.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room at the Bank Saloon. Coverage of the 2023 legislative session is brought to you by Liberty Dental Plan, making members shine one smile at a time. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. The Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, your RTC, our community. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. And by Nevada Builders Alliance, building a better Nevada. This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Sara Manns from the Compassion and Choices Action Network and Dr. Johanna Koch, who is a hospice physician. We're talking about SB 239, the Nevada End-of-Life Options Act. Dr. Joy, it seems to me that doctors, in a lot of cases, and I certainly know with some of my family members, have been very compassionate, and where end of life or a struggle were the choices, that they chose to help the family end that life, and without all this legal stuff, pulling plugs, and unhooking people from the equipment that was keeping them going. It just seems almost bizarre to me, and I understand religious reasons, and I'm pleased to hear Dr. Titus asking tough questions. I'm a big fan of hers because even though she's a politician, she's a doctor first. But it just seems to me that from a common sense point of view, that we should be moving ahead with this and allowing people of sound mind to make up their own mind about this really important. We're all going to die. I mean, that's the saddest thing is the second we're born, the next thing that's going to happen in life is you're going to die. So there's no escaping it. And I think that people should have the right to choose the time of their leaving. And I'm afraid I would go further than this bill does, but I understand that one step at a time. So the compassion of doctors, share that with me if you will. And coming from a background of hospice, I know that you do obviously extraordinary work.
Thank you. That's a great question. For decades, doctors with a wink and a nod have assisted people in dying when they were on their deathbeds already. And that is such an imprecise science that it's not always effective in the way we'd like it to be. And so in Nevada, for example, with palliative sedation, which is the term we use when somebody's symptoms cannot be managed without sedating them so much that they're asleep all the time, and that may hasten their death because they don't necessarily wake up to eat and drink. That process can take a week or two, and during that week or two, their body can decay. It can start to fall apart in ways that a family should never have to witness, and it's really, really messy. And so, just for example, the story I was going to tell about Nevada is about a man who begged for medical aid in dying. He had another cancer. It was a GI cancer. He'd, again, completed all the treatment he could possibly have completed. He wanted to go out on his own terms. He was tired of suffering. He was slowly starving to death, essentially. And he begged us to provide him with medical aid in dying. We offered him counseling. We offered him spiritual support. We offered him an emotional support. We offered him medications that helped to sedate him, but then he was so sedated that he couldn't function and couldn't have any of the quality in his life that was still remaining. And he, again, we offered, we could sedate you sufficiently that you don't wake up anymore. And he looked at me and he said, I don't want to linger in a coma for days or weeks at a time. This gentleman was in his 50s. He had a strong heart and lungs. He could have lived a really long time in a coma. And so instead, despite really good palliation and really good hospice care, he called the police one cold winter morning. He told them there was a dead body in his garage. And he went out into his garage. He laid down a tarp so that it was neat. And then he blew his brains out. And he did that so that we, his hospice team, wouldn't be traumatized by walking into the home and finding blood everywhere.
All right, let's leave that there. We'll absorb that and we'll come back and deal with more of the legislative stuff. But I really appreciate you sharing that story. We'll be right back. Okay, so you've got about...
Remember 2010 in northern Nevada, 13 to 14% unemployment, thousands of homes in foreclosure, Nevada's casinos closing? Families in the Reno-Sparks area were hurting. Many were losing everything. Then Story County launched a game changer for our region, a public-private industrial partnership, streamlined permitting, slashed bureaucracy, attracting Fortune 500 companies that made Nevada their home. Story County generated a river of cash to area communities. Economic studies by the state and others for the Gigafactory consistently show positive economic benefits for our region. $4 billion in local wages, $17 billion in consumer spending and economic activity, over $100 million in taxes to Washoe, Story, Reno, Sparks, and Nevada, just for the Gigafactory alone. Story County, improving northern Nevada one industry at a time.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're talking about the Nevada End-of-Life Options Act with Sara Manns and Dr. Johanna Koch. Where are we with this legislation? How close are we potentially to getting this passed this time?
I'm quite optimistic. Our sponsor, Edgar Flores, in the Senate is really doing everything that he can to make sure that this bill is something that everyone can say yes to. We have 18 co-sponsors in both houses. So we are very hopeful that it is time for Nevada to pass this much needed legislation. There are patients around the state who we know, and there are those who we have never heard from who are urgently in need of getting this through.
And I think that police and fire departments would be pleased that this could be done as well, because that would save a lot of them having to deal with horrible situations. Thank you both for being here, and thank you so much for the work you're doing. We appreciate it. And we'll be right back.
Early in the morning or throughout the night, professional truck drivers are on the job, serving you, safely moving freight that's crucial to our economy. From the oldest industries to our newest innovators, from the exotic to the everyday. Trucks are everywhere, moving everything. Never afraid to embrace a future that makes Nevada and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room at the Bank Saloon. Coverage of the 2023 legislative session is brought to you by Liberty Dental Plan, making members shine one smile at a time. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. The Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, your RTC, our community. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. And by Nevada Builders Alliance, building a better Nevada.
Thanks to the Bank Saloon in Carson City and the Builders Alliance for their help with our coverage of the 2023 legislative session. We'll see you on the next broadcast.